Alright everyone, welcome to High PSI TV. This evening we are going to talk about welders. What welder you should have in your shop. What you're doing with your welder is going to determine what kind of welder you need. Said I was going to do this video for a while now. I've been slacking. I've been having too much other stuff going on. But today what we're going to do is talk a little bit about welders and how they work and what you could use in your shop. In my shop I have a TIG welder and a MIG welder. I use different welders for different things. They each do things better than the other. So the MIG welder is real good for dirty work and the TIG welder is good for nice clean brand new metal. I have a Miller and a Lincoln. I'm not really brand loyal when it comes to welders. For these two welders it was more which I could get a better deal on at the time. Welders are an investment. They're not cheap. And they're not something that everyone has, but if you plan on doing any kind of fabrication work in your garage, you're going to need something to stick two pieces of metal together. So let's start out with the Miller TIG welder. So this welder is a Diversion 165. It's their entry-level TIG welder for hobbyists. This isn't really a professional grade welder. The duty cycle on this is kind of low. You can't sit there and weld at high amperage for a long amount of time. So this is for, come out here in the evening, use it for a couple of minutes, let it cool off, use it some more. But I love this welder. I use it a good amount and it does everything that I have ever asked it to do. So the specs on this welder are price. It's about $1,900. $1,900 is a good chunk of change for most of us hobbyists that play out in the garage. But what this welder will do for you over what a MIG welder would do is where the price increase comes from. This welder is precise. It welds mild steel, stainless, aluminum, chromoly. This will weld anything that you put in front of it up to a certain thickness. Miller tells you that this welder is good up to 3/16 material thickness. They say sheet metal thickness. I've welded stuff thicker. Sometimes I have to make two passes on it, but 3/16 is about as thick as anything that you're going to be welding in your personal shop anyways. To give you an idea, got a couple pieces of angle iron right here. These are both 1/8 inch thick, so you can see they got a good amount of thickness to them. If you have stuff thicker than this in your shop, you're doing something heavy duty, and for that you might need a little bit bigger welder. If you guys are on the farm welding up equipment, you're definitely going to want something bigger than this, and probably a MIG welder, because a MIG welder is going to do better for dirty metal, old metal, stuff that you can't get perfectly clean. If this welder gets any amount of trash in the arc, it screws up the weld pretty good. So this is going to be for new headers, new roll bars, new suspension components. If you're making seat brackets, anything that's brand new is going to do really well on. So both of these welders run on 230 volt. So if your garage isn't wired up for 230, that's something that you're going to have to look into. Most garages and shops, you're able to have a 230 volt outlet. These both require it. Some of the smaller welders, MIG and TIG, you can run off a 110. The problem is that limits the amount of stuff that you're going to be able to weld, thickness, how long you're going to be able to weld for, and heat control is going to change too. This is a Lincoln Easy MIG 180. This is another entry-level welder. I actually bought this one at Northern Tool. This machine cost about $700. I love this little guy. It's really, really easy to use. This is good for doing floor pans, sheet metal repair on the outside of your vehicle. If you have to weld an exhaust hanger to your exhaust, this will weld through galvanizing, which you're not supposed to do, but it'll do it. I use this thing to fix my lawnmower. The gun on this thing is actually really comfortable and easy to use. The way that the neck is bent, it lets you get into tight places. Comes with a couple of caps for the end of it. One is for gas welding, the other is for gasless welding. The welder comes with a spool of flux core wire, which is something you can use if you're not welding with a shielding gas. I don't recommend it. It does not look good. It's not strong. I'm not a fan of it. But if you're in like a high wind area, if you're doing some repair outside and the wind's blowing, shielding gas doesn't always work for you because the wind will blow the shielding gas away, and then you end up with a weld that's full of porosity and contaminants and stuff like that. You don't want that either. Like I said before, both of these machines are pretty entry level. If you go to a big shop like RPM Motorsports where I work, we've got big welders. And what you're going to gain with a more expensive, bigger welder is adjustability. Both of these welders are really simple when it comes to adjustments. The MIG welder has 2 knobs on it. The TIG welder has 1 and a switch. On the MIG welder, what we have is wire speed here and heat here. So basically, this is how fast the wire comes out of the gun, and this is how much amperage is flowing through the wire while you're welding. Looking inside the MIG welder, it's really simple. You have your negative lead, which goes to your ground clamp here. Your positive lead attaches to your wire drive, which goes out through the gun. This is a spool of 035 solid core wire. This isn't flux core wire. Then this is your tension adjustment on your spool, so that will basically put tension on these 2 wheels that pull the wire off the spool and push it through the gun. And then this is your little gas line that runs through the welder, connects to your tank through your regulator. Inside, we've got a little chart, and this tells you the settings that you should be using for what size material you're welding. So let's say you're doing some sheet metal repair, 18 gauge with 030 wire. Your wire speed 1, your heat A. So you can see the last thing I welded, I had my heat at D and my wire speed at about 6.5. So what it's saying is I was welding 3/16 thickness material, which is true, with between 030 and 035 wire. I had 035 wire in it. So this gives you a quick little idea of what this welder will do. Also, this welder has the ability to run a spool gun, so you can weld aluminum. Superglaze 4043 MIG, that is their spool gun that they sell, and it will do up to 3/16 aluminum. Spool guns are rather expensive. They work okay unless you're trying to have a pretty weld. These are really good for structural stuff, not so much for like doing tubing for intercoolers and stuff like that. So on the Miller TIG welder, we don't have a chart that tells us material thickness versus heat and wire speed and stuff like that. There is no wire speed on this because you're feeding the filler material in by hand. So your torch on this is just a tungsten electrode at the end of it. That creates your arc, and then you have to feed material into your arc. So you control the wire speed. But what it does tell you up here is it has a material thickness chart in either fractional or in decimal. So fractional and decimal. And then 10 to 165 is your amperage. Most stuff that I weld, tubing, header stuff, I'm between 60 and 75 amps. If I'm doing aluminum, I can get between 120 and 135. The only difference is DC welding, which is a solid arc, is steel, stainless, and chromoly. And a perfect time for my heater to kick on. Let me turn that off real quick. So basically, if I want to weld aluminum, all I have to do is flip this switch, change my amperage, and I'm ready to weld aluminum. I use a red tungsten, which is 2% in almost all the welding that I do. I keep a bunch of it here at the house. And this torch has a gas lens on the end of it too for more gas coverage. Gives you a better looking weld. Both of my welders sit on the same cart. They're from Harbor Freight. They're about 120 bucks a piece, but they're well worth having because I can grab this welder and roll it around the shop wherever I need to. It's not sitting on the bench where I have to drag the project to it. If I'm welding on the Packard or if I've got a car on the lift, I can drag the welder over to it and complete my weld. So let's talk about what I use each of these for. This, like I said, is for my dirty work. If I have to fix my lawnmower up at RPM Motorsports, if I'm doing subframe connectors or any kind of structure welding to the bottom of a car, like if I'm putting in a 4-link bracket or if I'm welding an exhaust hanger to a frame, MIG welder by far the easiest and best choice for work like that. When you're MIG welding, you can burn through some of the trash that's going to be associated with old frames, old exhaust. And when you're doing subframe connectors, you might not be able to get all the paint off. And this can adapt with that. TIG welders. This is going to be more for brand new metal, like I said before. If you're building headers, TIG welder is definitely the way to go. The amount of control that you get with your heat and your filler rod gives you a nice tight weld. Definitely a prettier finished product. If you're going to be doing aluminum tubing, TIG welder is really the only way to go. So cost is a big factor for most guys. This is about the smallest welder that I would get for a hobbyist kind of a shop. And like I said before, it's $1,900. By the time you get the cart, you get your filler rod, you get your gas, and all that stuff hooked up, you're going to be over $2,000 in getting this welder set up. This welder, $700. The cart, the gas, and everything like that, by the time you're done, you're going to be in about $800 because it comes with wire, so you're ready to go if you need to get a project started right away. You have to have different types of wire or filler rod when you're using a TIG welder. Stainless, aluminum, mild steel, and there's a bunch of different kind of filler rod that you can get too. You can get different grades of stainless, different grades of aluminum. I've welded cylinder heads before. You can use a different type of filler rod for that. So that's basically it, guys. You got one Lincoln, one Miller. I've looked at others too. Everlast is one of them. Hobart is another brand that I've looked at before. I like sticking with name brand stuff. And the main reason for that is if something happens with either of these welders, I can call someone and they're going to help me. You know, if you buy something off Amazon or you buy something off of eBay or off of a, Japanese website, you're not going to be able to call them and say, hey, I'm having this problem, I need help. I can take either of these welders to the local welding shop and they can repair them on site. All right, guys, so that's just a short little video talking about hobby welding and what you might want to use in your shop. When I started out, MIG welder was the only thing that I had. If I needed to do any kind of TIG welding, I had to take it up to RPM Motorsports and do it up there. The TIG welder I was lucky enough to be able to get a hold of on a really good deal, and I use it here at the shop almost exclusively. I don't use the MIG welder a whole lot anymore because I enjoy the precision that the TIG welder has compared to the MIG welder. But for starting out, if you guys want to spend a couple $100, look at a welder from Northern Tool. Northern Tool actually carries Lincoln Electric. This is the, I don't want to say bottom of the line, but this is their entry-level machine. They have one that is smaller than this, but about all you're going to be able to do with that is sheet metal repair. If you need to get into exhaust work or any kind of frame repair, it won't do it. This is the smallest machine that you can get that will do up to 3/16 thickness material. Entry-level TIG welder does everything that I need it to do here at the shop. The only thing that I wish was different about this machine is it doesn't have post-flow control. So a lot of the stainless that I do, this is okay. The post-flow is about 8 seconds long. So you hold your shielding gas over your weld until the post-flow stops, and then you can get nice color out of it. But when I'm doing aluminum, I don't need a post-flow that's that long. All I need the post-flow for is to cool the tungsten, because this is an air-cooled machine. So I wish that it had adjustable post-flow because I waste a lot of gas when I use this machine, and I don't need to. If you get up into the Dynasty machines, they have more adjustments. They are definitely more expensive, but you can save on gas. You can change how your arc starts. You can get water-cooled torches, which I think is really cool. I've welded with a Dynasty machine before with a water-cooled torch. You can finish your weld and you can grab the end of the torch and it's cool. It's really nice. One thing that I forgot to mention, guys, is portability. Both these machines you can pick up and take with you. This guy weighs 65 pounds, of course without the gas bottle. That guy weighs 55 pounds without the gas bottle. So you can disconnect your gas bottle, throw this in the back of the truck, take your gas with you, go over to your buddy's house and help him out with the project. You don't need two people to load these things. They're actually pretty light for how much is packed inside of them. So if you guys have any questions about welders for your shop at home, or if you have any questions about my welders, please feel free to ask in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. I read all your comments and I try to respond to every one of them. And let me know if there's any other kind of shop equipment you guys want to know about. What I think about drill presses, grinders. I don't have a whole lot here. I have enough to get me by. When I started fabricating, I didn't have a bandsaw. I had a Sawzall. And that is all that I used for doing tubing. For building headers, I used a Sawzall, and then I had to grind everything to a perfect fit. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.